Welcome to Spotlight Television. My name is Tom Hegna, and I'm your host today with Imran and Daniel Razvi. They are part of the Higher Ground Financial Group. They're located in Baltimore, Maryland, but they serve clients all around the country. Welcome to the show today.
Thank you, Tom.
Now,
Hello.
Tell us a little bit how you got to this business. How did you get to where you are today?
Well, about 30 years ago, I answered an ad, help people make money. I didn't really know what I was going to be doing, but it was insurance. And got into management, continued in that process, really liked helping people, really liked the insurance field. And then after about 20 years, I got kind of fed up because I wanted to be more of a fiduciary and be able to offer many companies as opposed to just one company. So about 10 years ago, Daniel, my eldest son, and I, we opened up Higher Ground Financial Group as more of a retirement income planning firm than anything else. And as a fiduciary, we can offer any company out there as opposed to just having one company that we're working for.
Now, what do you do when you're not doing financial stuff and helping people?
Well, Tom, as you know, I have 13 children. So we adopted 8 children, have 5 birth children. So through that adoption, we created Conquered by Love Ministries. It is a nonprofit organization, and my wife and I have written about 45 books to help parents overcome emotional needs in children and help them mature better without medication. And so it's at conqueredbylove.org. We do that, and we speak all over the country. In fact, we speak in a couple other countries as well.
Daniel, what do you do when you're not doing financial stuff?
Well, I really enjoy spending time with my wife and kids, but my background before I went to law school was actually piano, so I'm a concert pianist. And so when I'm not helping clients, then I'm often performing piano, and we have concerts monthly at our house and bring in clients and friends and a lot of other musicians to perform with me, and it's a lot of fun. I love classical music.
So now tell me about your business. Is there really a difference between an investment advisor and, say, an income advisor or tax advisor? Kind of share where you're at with that.
Yeah, so an investment advisor, you have them, they're creating investments or money for you. And I want to share a story with you. This is a can, right? People notice a can. So what's the story behind a can? Well, Napoleon could only conquer the world if his food didn't spoil. But once his food started spoiling, so he put out a contest. He said, somebody please preserve our food so we can conquer the world. And somebody came up with a can. It wasn't this, but it was a can. But there was something missing from that can. You know what was missing? The can opener. They didn't have a can opener for 50 years later, 48 years. That didn't mean you had to preserve the food for 48 years. It just meant that you had to use a hammer and chisel and ruin some of the food. So when you've been saving and working and saving all your life and putting money in IRAs, TSPs, 401ks, 403bs, now you got to get the money out without ruining it. So you want to minimize taxes, fees, and risk and make sure that you get the most use out of your money. And that's why we're different as income planners as opposed to investment advisors.
So what are the top 3 things that people can do who've watched this interview today to minimize their risk, fees, and taxes?
Well, the first thing, Tom, is they got to identify what's happening. They got to identify the risk, the fees, the taxes, and then start eliminating those, right? If you take them off the table, it makes it a lot easier. You're not losing money. That's one thing. And, if you're playing a football game and you're in the last quarter, you're winning by 30 points, you're not going to leave your best players in. You're going to pull them out. Why leave them there to get injured? And same thing with your money. If you're got enough money to have enough income for the rest of your life, why do you want to risk it? There's no reason to risk that. And then the last thing is if you're not retired yet, then you can change your contributions in your 401k or TSP or 403b to Roth contributions. Now, whatever the company's matching, that'll still be tax deferred, but at least what you're putting in will be tax-free growth after that because you pay a little bit higher taxes now, but you will never pay taxes on the growth after that.
I think of all the successful people, athletes and movie stars, and they had plenty of money. They could have been set for the rest of their lives, but they took risk with it, and they lost everything. It just makes my heart hurt when I see that, because if you've got money, one of the biggest things you want to do is protect it. You've got to protect the wealth as well as grow the wealth, and I think that's what you guys do very well.
One of the most famous investors of all time is Warren Buffett, and he has his rule number 1, which is don't lose money. And in fact, his rule number 2 is don't forget rule number 1. So it's very, very important to not lose money. And if you don't lose money to those 3 biggest killers in retirement, risk, fees, and taxes, everything else gets better.
Some people say no risk, no reward. Is that true?
In some cases it's true, but in many cases it's not true. Risk and reward are not necessarily linked like people think that they are. So for example, back in 2000, if you had $1 million and you invested it for about 20 years, with all the market risk, you might have come up with about $2.5 million after the 20 years. But if you invested in treasuries guaranteed by the federal government, you would have had over $3.5 million. So you'd have a lot more money at the end with no risk. So many times taking less or even no risk will give you a better result. It really depends on the time period. It depends on what your goals are, but you want to not have risk and reward linked. They can be separate in many cases, and they should be considered separately.
Now, one of the things you do is try to help people increase their income. I mean, is it really possible to double somebody's income in retirement?
Yeah, Tom, I mean, most investment advisors say between 2.8 to 4% is your withdrawal rate. It doesn't really matter what the mix of the stocks and bonds are, right? So you're stuck with 4%.
So if I have $1 million, I can only spend $30,000 or $40,000 at the most?
That's with traditional planning. But when we talk about the volatility buffer or sequence of returns, Daniel, what can we do?
So there's really two reasons why advisors usually say to only spend 3 or 4% in retirement. And one is sequence of returns risk. That's the idea that there will be good years and bad years in retirement. And we can't control when those happen. So if they happen early on, it'll be a double hit to the retirement. You take a withdrawal and the market crash, so now it's like a double withdrawal, and it's really hard to recover. And that's why you can't take very much income out, even if your investments are averaging better than that. And then the other risk in retirement is living too long, longevity risk. If you live a really long time, you might run out of money. And so there's two ways to deal with those two problems in retirement. If sequence of returns risk can be dealt with using a volatility buffer strategy. And the volatility buffer is the idea that not all of your money is in the market. Some, maybe half or even the majority, is safe or protected, that in the bad years, you can use that account to pay for your lifestyle. And in the good years, when the market's doing well, then you can use your equities, your market assets. But now you have a choice each year, so you never have to take that double hit in retirement. So that's volatility buffer. And then the longevity risk can be handled with guaranteed lifetime income. So, you know, you can get if you don't have a pension already, you can get a private pension, some kind of product that guarantees a certain payment for life. And some of them even have inflation increases on those. And that's a really good way. So a lot of times now your safe withdrawal rate using those strategies can be 6 or even 7%, and you're never running out of money because you handled sequence of returns and you handled the longevity risk.
Now, Daniel, you're a tax attorney.
Yes.
And I know your clients appreciate that fact. Why are taxes so important in the retirement equation?
Well, there's several things that change when you retire. Now you got to be spending money, and you have a limited number of sources to get money out in retirement. Most people have almost all their money in tax-deferred accounts, IRAs, 401ks, TSPs. And they've been told to defer, just kick the can down the road, kick the can down the road. But it's not really kicking a can down the road.
No, it's a snowball. You're kicking a snowball down a hill, and it's getting bigger and bigger and out of control.
So this is a little toy, slinky toy. And if this is your money now, and as you grow and save and invest, and then eventually leave to the kids, this is your total wealth. Would you rather pay tax on this or pay tax on this? I mean, most people would much rather pay tax on the seed instead of the harvest. But we defer. So what can you do? You can do a Roth conversion. So you can convert the IRA to Roth, and that means you pay tax now, and it hurts to pay tax, but it's better to pay a little bit more tax now instead of paying a lot more later. And there's only a couple more years left before the tax rates go up. And who knows what will happen after that, but they are going up in a couple years.
Daniel, aren't there strategies to be able to reduce the taxes?
Yes, there are strategies to reduce the taxes. Again, if you pay them before the rates go up, so that's one thing. But what if you say, well, I don't know where I'm going to get the money even to pay that tax? There are some other strategies you can use that are outside of your IRAs, such as a charitable trust, for example. So you could have a charitable remainder trust. And what that does is it allows you to get rid of an asset that is highly appreciated, like a stock or maybe a rental property, that if you sold it, you really only have a couple choices normally.
Capital gains or 1031 exchange.
Right. So if you don't want that, you could donate the property or the stock to a charitable trust, and then you defer the capital gains indefinitely. So you don't pay those capital gains. You also get a giant tax deduction for doing that because the money will someday go to charity.
It's about 50%, right?
And depending on your age, if you're retired, it's going to be around 50%. And then you get a pension from that. So the pension is 5 or 6% off of that for the rest of your life. And that allows you to get rid of the capital gains. They're deferred indefinitely. You get a big tax deduction, and you can take that deduction over to your IRAs and make it into a Roth account. So you're killing 3 or 4 birds with one stone. And at the end, that account does go to charity, but you get all these upfront benefits for that. So there's a whole bunch of different strategies that you can use in retirement that are very different than the tax strategies you might use while you're working.
Are you concerned about any of the new tax rules that are planned?
Yes, so in 2 years, as I mentioned, the tax rates or the tax cuts from several years ago are going to expire. So the rates are going to go up. Now, many people are aware of that because it's been talked about on the news, but a lot of people are not aware that the brackets themselves may be shrinking quite a bit because we have high inflation adjustments on these current brackets. So you may find that when you reach that time a couple years from now, you may go up 2 or 3 brackets, not just one bracket, because the room in each bracket is shrinking dramatically. Most people, when they come to us and they have most of their money in IRAs, the IRAs are their least favorite bucket of money because they hate paying taxes. Every time you take the money out, you got to pay more tax, and you have those required distributions, even if your plan is to leave it to the kids, because that's another new law recently, the Secure Act, which prevents you from doing the stretch IRA. So when you die, it used to be your kids could inherit that money and pay taxes over their lifetime. Now they got to pay all the tax within 10 years. And it's just a mess.
You talk a lot about the important years in retirement. What are those most important years in retirement?
Very good question. In the last 4 years before you retire and the first 4 years of retirement are very important. Think about it. If you retired in 1996 and took out 5% per year, you'd be fine. But if 4 years later in 2000, you took out 5%, you'd be broke in 18 years. That's how just 4 years makes a difference. We just don't know when the bad years are going to be in retirement. So we have to take precautions and make sure we have a volatility buffer, make sure we have the risk handled so that we don't have those problems. So then it doesn't matter if we retire in a bad environment because we're okay.
If you've handled the 3 biggest killers to retirement, which really are, and they really are killers, these are the most common ways to lose money in retirement is risk, fees, and taxes. If you can get rid of those, reduce or eliminate them to the greatest extent possible, it increases everything else and it reduces stress in retirement.
Now, if somebody wanted to contact you, they wanted to ask you questions, they wanted to find out more about how you can help people, how would they find you?
Well, the first place is to just Google us, right? You can Google Higher Ground Financial Group and you can see our reviews, see what people are saying about us, and see who we are. And then
you could also go to our website. If you want to meet with us and just schedule a meeting, you can go to danielandraz.com. or you can go to riskfeesandtaxes.com, and both of those sites will point to our calendar, and you can pick out a time for a video call that works well for you and see us one-on-one.
And I think we put a QR code in the comments as well. So thank you very much to both of you for attending today, and I want to thank all of you for watching Spotlight Television again. Today we focused on Higher Ground Financial Group. I am really excited about our next guest, Brad Pistole from Springfield, Missouri. He runs the Trinity Insurance and Financial Services Group there in Springfield, does business all over the place. But welcome to the show.
Tom, thanks for having me. It's so good to be here.
So Brad, I know you're very, very successful at what you do, but how did it start? It wasn't rosy from the very beginning, was it?
Not your typical start for most people in this financial services world. So, Tom, from age 19 to age 36, I was actually in full-time ministry. I was a youth and family life minister. And so I knew nothing about money. As a matter of fact, I actually opted out of Social Security when I was 19 because ministers have a chance to conscientiously object. And I did. I can be a better steward of my money than the government can. And I opted out. So I had literally no Social Security, no retirement savings. And then at age 36, time to make a transition, you go through a life change. And fortunately, I had a father who had spent 52 years, he spent 52 total years in the financial services industry, was a CLU, chartered financial consultant. He worked for Blue Cross Blue Shield and Merrill Lynch. And so he said, hey, you should go take your tests. I don't know if it'll turn into anything, but you've been around me your whole life. You ought to give this a shot. And so that was my beginning at age 36, starting all over. I opened my business in the midst of the financial crisis in 2008, was my first year in business.
So you didn't even really start your own retirement plan until you were in your 30s. What advice would you give somebody in their 20s or early 30s on how to get started for saving for retirement?
My advice to a young person is start absolutely as soon as you can. I didn't start till age 36, and I've been super blessed with what's happened, but start as soon as you can. Those early years are really important. And meet people who are key in this industry, who know what they're talking about. I went to a conference where you spoke in 2009, and I thought, I want to follow this guy around, read all of his information, do everything he does. And so I did that. And then I was also blessed to meet America's IRA expert, Ed Slott. And I went to one of his 2-day Ed Slott Elite IRA Advisor Group meetings, and I thought, I'm joining this group. I want to be around the best of the best of the best. And so I've been in the Ed Slott group for 15 years. I've been following you for 15 years. It transformed my life. So start early, meet people that know what they're doing, follow and emulate them.
There's so many choices out there. There's 401ks, there's IRAs, there's Roth, there's investments, there's crypto, there's annuities, there's life insurance, there's mutual funds, there's ETFs. What advice would you give to somebody on really starting to build that portfolio?
So be very careful of one major trap we all fall into. When we're young, we graduate from college, and we're eager to get started. Everyone tells us about the 401k. You need to sign up for the 401k, and you're going to get free money in the match, and we all jump in. But none of us at a young age, 24, 25, we have no clue what's coming 30 years down the road. We don't understand what tax deferral means. We didn't save the tax, we deferred the tax. So when you start off with a 401k and you get this free money, it's not all yours. You're in a joint partnership and joint ownership with Uncle Sam. He reaches out his hand and says, nice to meet you, and he handcuffs you. He's got you. So be careful with the 401k. If there's a 401k Roth option, contribute to the Roth. Max fund a Roth IRA if you have the opportunity to. Max fund cash value life insurance, things that are going to provide tax-free income to you in the future.
You know, when you study the history of the 401k, it started back when tax rates were higher. And it made perfect sense to take money out of your check, get a tax deduction, let it grow tax deferred, so when you retired, you're probably in a lower tax bracket. It made perfect sense. We all did it. Well, now taxes are near the lowest they've ever been. We're $34 trillion in debt. The debt's climbing at $5 billion every single morning. There's $200 trillion of unfunded obligation for Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, government pensions, military pensions. Taxes have to go up. It's not a Democrat or Republican thing. It's a math problem. And so now how much sense does it make to take money out when taxes are low to get a tax break, to defer them so when taxes double, triple from here, then I'm going to take it out and pay taxes? That doesn't make any sense. So I think you're right on the money. I've personally been able to do many of these same things because I'm focused on trying to get as much tax-free income in retirement as well. Now, you've written 2 best-selling books. Your latest book is Bulletproof. Yeah. Kind of tell what's that book about and why did you decide to write it?
The book is about, it's Bulletproof, the safe and secure retirement income plan. We talk about setting up tax-free accounts. If you're already in tax-deferred accounts, how to get those taxes out and removed, remove that tax tumor, Roth conversions, but also protecting your account, using things like annuities with guaranteed income riders and cash value life insurance, passing on tax-free wealth to your family. So we've really enjoyed it and love writing the book.
Now, you know, I was on the train yesterday and I was reading the Wall Street Journal. You were quoted in the Wall Street Journal about some of this same stuff.
So the interesting thing, that's right, it was cool to get here and be able to get a copy of it in New York City. So it's very interesting. You know, the article that was written was about the required minimum distributions being at all-time highs because the market is so high. And so we look at our accounts and we're like, yeah, I'm super wealthy, but that's not all our money. Uncle Sam's saying, remember, I'm a joint owner in that account. And because we hit a certain threshold, these younger people who are wanting to build wealth, and we want them to, they're going to reach a day where Uncle Sam says, remember, I'm the silent partner, and now I'm going to be a loud partner. And you're going to have to take money out, and here's how much you've got to take out, and here's how much you're going to pay in taxes. And he's moving that lever all the time. And so we want to be very, very careful about tax-deferred savings. We want tax-free.
Now, in the book, you talk about this triple whammy.
Yeah.
Tell me about the triple whammy.
So Tom, as we're building our wealth, I know in your new book, in Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, you talk about the 3 phases. So we're building it and saving it, and then we protect it, and then we start to distribute it. Well, the triple whammy comes in when you start to take those distributions, and here's the triple whammy. If you take distributions, once you turn the faucet on and you retire, you take distributions, while the market's going backwards, while paying an advisor a fee, that is a really dangerous combination.
And then you talk about this quadruple triple whammy. Tell me about that and how that can prevent people from becoming a millionaire.
So the quadruple whammy is why we really want to encourage young people to save their retirement savings in tax-free accounts. Here's why. Add one element to the triple whammy. It's distributions plus losses plus fees plus taxes. So if you have $1 million in your account and I have $1 million in my account, but mine's a Roth and yours is tax deferred, who has more money? I have a lot more money than you do. Especially now, think about this, Tom. If mine's protected, it's in an annuity that protects the principal with an income rider, and it's a Roth, it's tax-free. Over here, you're just playing the market and you're in a tax-deferred account. We both start distributions. Well, if you go through distributions plus losses plus fees and then pay taxes on the distribution, you wanted that 50 grand, but Uncle Sam says, wait, I get 50% of that 50 grand. So you do all of that from $1 million account and end up with $25,000 in your pocket. That's a terrible formula. That's a disaster. We want it to be tax-free and protected. So stay away from the triple and the quadruple whammy.
Why is it so important in retirement to finish strong in the second half?
The second half of the game is very, very important. And so both my son and I, Hunter and I, are retirement income certified professionals through the American College. I'm also a certified financial fiduciary and a certified annuity specialist. But through our training through the RICP with people like Dr. Wade Fowle and many, many other key guests, we have learned that how you finish the game is really important. We want to focus on that second half, making sure we go from tax deferred to tax free, making sure that our risk corridor has come down. We're now protecting what we spent our entire life saving. And now we're ready to turn on tax-free income that's guaranteed, that's going to last the rest of our lives.
And what people don't realize is sometimes those required minimum distributions can cause their Medicare premiums to go up significantly. And many people don't understand this whole IRMA requirement that Medicare now has like 5 different brackets, and they're big difference from the lowest Medicare to the highest Medicare bracket.
To go from 174 to 500 and something. So many times on the show I've had my good friend Heather Schreiber. I think she's America's expert when it comes to Social Security planning, and we call her Aunt Irma. You don't want to tick off Aunt Irma. And they're like, what's IRMA? Well, that's this income threshold, and if you make too much money, it's what determines your Medicare premium 2 years down the road. So when you sell a house or you take a distribution from a tax-deferred account to help one of your children, you don't realize 2 years from now, that might have taken you from $174 up to $500 and something dollars. So we have to be very, very careful about not only Medicare, Social Security taxation, federal taxation, state taxation. Uncle Sam is going to get us everywhere we turn, and that's why we say, we borrow this from Ed Slott, he says it all the time, it's not what you make, it's what you keep after taxes that counts when it comes to your retirement. And we want people investing and protecting their wealth in tax-free accounts.
Share with me, your thoughts on life insurance. I think it can play a big role in some of this tax planning we're talking about.
Sure. Well, Tom, for me, this goes all the way back to 2009 when I met you. So I stole my current portfolio from you. So I literally I own 8 life insurance policies. I've owned 10. I own 7 annuities. People are like, well, why in the world do you own 8 life insurance policies? Well, let's use a real example. I owned a policy on my father. My father passed away last year. It was unexpected. But thankfully, I was the owner, the payer, and the beneficiary of that life insurance policy. Now, I could have, being a good steward of my money means I want to put it into the best place I can to reap the greatest reward, right? I put it into something that paid me back triple what I put into it as an investment and paid me tax-free. What was I able to do with that when my father passed? I paid for his funeral. I paid for all the expenses for my mother that she would not have been able to afford. So why do I own 8 policies? Why did I own 10? Well, I own one on my dad. I own one on my mom. I own a second to die on my mom and dad. I own policies on my children. I own policies on myself. I put more than 6 figures a year, every year, into permanent cash value life insurance. Why? I've studied all the research, your research, the research of many, many other best-selling authors who talk about how many corporations put billions and billions and billions of dollars into life insurance. Why is that? They know something we don't know. They're finding out a way to leave Uncle Sam on the bench. So when you can take the power of Roth IRAs and Roth 401ks, cash value life insurance, other vehicles that are tax-free, you leave him on the bench. And there's one way around having money saved in a tax-deferred account. If someone's like, I can't afford the tax on converting right now, and I didn't hear you until I've already put $200,000 into my tax-deferred account. Well, there is a day down the road when you will have to take required minimum distributions, and you can use something called a QCD, a qualified charitable distribution. So if you're already charitably inclined and giving it away anyway, use that tax deferred account that you took a tax deduction on up front, give it away to a charity, and leave Uncle Sam on the bench completely. So those are the strategies that we talk about with our client.
What final piece of advice would you give viewers who are on their journey to becoming a millionaire?
Start as soon as they can. Find people to follow who know what they're doing, and don't give up on that. You know, you're going to have setbacks in life, there's no doubt. And you're going to go through things where it's your mind's going to tell you, hey, I need to stop, I need to pause, I can't fund this. But don't give up. Continue to contribute. The power of compounding, and the power of compounding tax-free. So come up with a good plan. Meet with a qualified financial professional who knows what they're doing and knows what they're talking about. Ask them if they're doing it for themselves. I tell everyone, ask me what I'm doing. I'll pull out my annuities, my life insurance policies. I'll show you exactly what I'm doing. And most people will say, hey, I want to do what you're doing to get to where you are.
Because see, Brad, you don't just talk the talk, you walk the walk. And I do too. My life insurance premium is $226,000 a year, and people say that's crazy. It's only crazy if you look at life insurance as an expense. When you realize it's an asset on your balance sheet, every penny I put in that policy is in there, plus a lot more. So, I mean, that's the way that you really secure wealth, and gives me many opportunities to take money out tax-free. Look, I know there's a lot of people who say, gee, I want to talk to that Brad guy. So how do they get a hold of you? If they want your book, or if they want to meet with you, how can they get a hold of you?
Sure, they can go on YouTube, Spotify, Apple. Just look up Brad Pistole, Safe Money Radio. You can subscribe to the podcast. You can subscribe to the weekly show. I'm on 5 times a week locally, but you can listen to it anytime just by the power of new technology. You can always go to our website, www.guaranteedsafemoney.com, and we're here to help.
Brad, thank you so much for giving your knowledge to everybody today. And thank you for watching another episode of Tom Hegnes, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire.